Welcome back.
Today we discuss the following:
The fear of discovery and where it's rooted,
how to embrace the conflict in your sales cycles,
and how to own the sales process using a mutual action plan.
and with that, enjoy the episode.
Sales Excellence. This is your podcast for software B2B sales and pre-sales. My name is Tim and I'm a sales engineer at Seismic.
And I'm Jan, a pre-sales leader at SAP. Welcome to a new episode of our show.
So with that, one little housekeeping disclaimer. If you want to support the show and you like the show, Jan and I, we went through the effort of translating actually the 6 habits of sorry, I have to repeat that. The 6 habits of effective sales engineers into the German version. Chances are you are most likely German because I think like 90% of our audience is German speaking. So if you want to support the show, link is in the show notes. Without further ado, let's introduce today's guests. We have Matt Wolach on the show, and he is a SaaS sales coach with decades of hands-on experience and being a SaaS founder himself, actually. He has developed a framework for SaaS and how to close deals quickly and repeatedly. And actually, he is, obviously educating other software founders using his experience on that one. With a motto in mind, sales is hard, software sales is especially hard. He's, by the way, also a podcast host of the show SaaS Story in the Making. Apologies. Welcome to the show, Matt. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Tim. How are you?
Yeah, fantastic over here. Thanks for joining us. And so I want to pick up on that little motto of yours, right? So you say sales is hard, and I think we can agree on that. Software sales is especially hard. What makes software sales specifically hard in your mind, Matt?
Yeah, great question. Well, I learned this the hard way. I had done sales previously, had some success with it. And then once I started a software company with a couple of friends, it was my responsibility to handle the growth, the marketing, and the sales. And already having some experience, I felt really confident in it. I said, you guys take care of this. You guys do your stuff. I'll focus on all this stuff. You don't have to worry about it. And what ended up happening was I fell flat on my face and couldn't do it and couldn't figure it out and didn't know why all of my old processes didn't work within the software world. And it took me quite a while to figure out the right process for SaaS. And some of the things, really, one of the major differences is that you're not just selling one thing and then it's over, they're done. You sell something, but then really every month it needs to be continually sold. We have a recurring model, whether it's every month or every year. And so this is something that on and on, they're remaking a decision of whether they want to keep you and stay with you. And if you have a SaaS company where your customers don't stay with you and they churn at a high rate, you're going to be out of business pretty quick. And so it went from, hey, I need to sell something to now I need to be a bit more consultative, a bit more guiding and help them make the right decision for them. And it really kind of had me change my entire structure, my philosophies on sales. And I'm glad it did because it made me better. It made me help more people. And it was a really great experience to understand how to sell within the SaaS world, which was awesome.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So you're saying the main difference is the shift in mindset necessary if you're embracing a continuous success in the SaaS world as opposed to selling once off and then hit the ground running, so to say, and let the customer do their own thing, right?
Exactly.
That doesn't work anymore.
Exactly. And the other thing is selling SaaS is different also because, let's say you're selling a car. Like they can get in it, they can feel it, they can test drive the car, they can go out on the Autobahn and tear it up a little bit. But here, in SaaS, they can't really feel it. They can't get it. Now, maybe they did a trial, but sometimes in the trial, they don't put all their stuff in. And so it becomes really hard for them to realize what will it be like when our whole team is in here? We're all trying to do this. Will it actually work for us? And so helping the prospect and your soon-to-be customer come to an understanding of what reality will look like is very difficult within the software world.
Yeah. And I think this brings us straight to the topic of conversation for today, because actually you And us, we met on LinkedIn because you did a post on the topic of discovery, which is a topic very close to Jan's and my heart, because this is something that we often philosophize about, also talk about it on the show. And we haven't covered it now for some time. Now it was time to sort of go back in again. So it was a welcome topic suggestion, so to say. And I think it goes directly in line with what you just said, right? Because if you want to have a sustainable SaaS business model, proper discovery is basically essential, I would argue. And we can go into that, why that is, in just a second. But I maybe want to start with a very specific question here, what I've observed in my, let's say, last 10 years of doing software sales. Obviously, me working in pre-sales, I'm a huge proponent of discovery. I want to do discovery with every single prospect that I come across because I fundamentally believe it's essential to success. However, sometimes there are some hurdles. Sometimes I speak to, for example, salespeople that say, yeah, discovery, we've done already some discovery. I've like 3 bullet points here. This is the discovery we're going to get. And now we want to jump straight into the demo. And for me, that is not satisfactory. And the impression I get sometimes is there's almost like a fear of going into that discovery conversation. And I wonder why that is.
I see that as well. And the other thing that I see a lot is in discovery, people think that really you're just trying to qualify, that we just need to make sure, is this a fit? Is this a customer that we want to have within our ecosystem, within our community? Is this somebody who's going to get value? Are they a fit for this product? And that's great. You definitely need to understand that. You definitely need to make sure that that is somebody who you want to have around paying you over and over and over, and they're not going to be too much of an annoyance. But finding fit is just one of the things that you should be doing in discovery. There are other things in discovery that are necessary. There are other missions, so to speak, that you want to accomplish. For example, it's an opportunity to connect with your buyer. You need to make sure that you can connect personally with them, get them to understand that you are somebody who can help. You can demonstrate expertise within discovery through the questions you ask and how you dive in deeper on questions. They will learn that you know what you're talking about, even without you saying, I am an expert at this or that. Just by the way you ask questions and what you ask, they'll get it. And most importantly, in discovery, that a lot of people don't do is that is a great time to get people really emotional, to get them really feeling the pain. Too many times we let up too early in discovery. We say, oh, there's a fit. Great. Let's move on. We really need them feeling the pain. We need them to get emotional about their problems if they're going to make a change. And so that's discovery is more than finding a fit. You've got to go deeper and continue it, even if you know they're the right fit.
I mean, I typically try to disconnect qualification and discovery, right? I would argue qualification is more like the question, are we able to make a sale here potentially? Is there really a problem that we can solve for them? And is there budget? And do we have the right timelines? And is there a need? And all these good things. And then discovery, and I like the way you put it, is really where you go into the deeper technical topics. And here I'm not talking about integration. I'm more talking about like the deep business processes, the impact that we can potentially have by, well, obviously putting a solution in place at the later stage. Although discovery is obviously not the time to do the solutioning, right? It's more asking the right questions and conveying that expertise via asking the right questions. I really like that point because for being perceived as a subject matter expert, it's not about talking and selling. It's more about, as you put it, asking the right questions. So, but still, I wonder, like, we, the three of us here, we agree on this point, but still there seems sometimes to be that doubt in mind that the customer might not make the time to actually go into such discovery calls, because now we've already spoken from inside sales with the guys. Now you want to do another discovery session. We have already spoken so much. They want to see the demo or something like that, right? There's, again, that sort of that perceived fear or that the impression that it will be a waste as opposed to progress the deal, actually. Do you see that?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely some angst out there when you're a prospect and they keep you from the demo, and it's like, what are we doing? We still haven't seen it. What is happening? I've felt that myself. But really, you can solve that if you really keep the prospect understanding what the steps are. Continue to set agendas, to continue to let them know what's coming, continue to make sure you're telling them the next steps. Gong has done studies on this, and they keep talking about how if you're not mentioning the next steps right from the beginning of the call, you're more likely to lose the deal. So you want to make sure that you set an agenda, get buy-in from them that agenda works, and continue to remind them of what's going to happen next. And that can feel really structured to some people. Salespeople are like, well, that's a lot of structure. I like it more conversational. But actually, the buyers appreciate that structure. They like seeing somebody who knows what they're doing. They have confidence in laying it out. It shows they've done it many times before. They have a process. People would much rather go through a smooth, well-structured process than somebody who's just kind of bouncing all over the place, not quite sure what to do.
And I would assume that they would not necessarily say, oh, this is a nice structure and we really feel the structure. I think they would just say, okay, we feel in good hands, right? So you as the vendor, you have the structure, you have a clear plan, but they will not realize it. From my understanding, if you do it in a specific way, they just will feel well guided through that whole buying journey.
Absolutely true, Yannick. They have to know that you are the one who knows what you're doing and that you, like you said, that they're in good hands with you. That feels so good. If you're talking with 3 different companies and you're looking at 3 different products, and a couple, it's like, what are they doing? They don't quite know. And one is like, here's what's going to happen. This. And the structure that I use, I train my clients on, is set the agenda and get a buy-in to the agenda. So it would go something like this. Hey guys, super excited to talk with you. Cannot wait to share what we have. But first, I'm going to ask you some questions. I want to really dive in and figure out what's going on and where you're looking to get. From all of that, I'll have a good understanding of whether our solution is right for you. And if so, I'll walk you through the aspects that are perfect for you, and then we'll see about getting you guys started. Does that all sound fair? And just doing that, they're going to be like, whoa, obviously, this is not his first rodeo. Obviously, he knows what to do. We've done it before. And when you do that, does this sound fair? At the end, and everybody says yes, they just agreed to go through all of those processes, including those questions with you. And so mentally, once they've agreed to that, they don't want to go back on that agreement. They don't want to say, well, come on, can we get going? They already said, yes, that sounds great. And so it works brilliantly.
Do you see that also applicable not on the sort of tactical meeting level, but also on the broader sales engagement that maybe passes over a couple of weeks or maybe even months on larger size deals, that you sort of have to set the engagement at the very beginning, lay out a plan, like the different steps? Is that something that you also talk about?
Absolutely. So for the bigger deals, I like to use what's called a MAP. It's a mutual action plan. And essentially what you do is initially in discovery, you have to figure out what their buying process is. I was just talking with one of my clients today. He said that most of the times the contact that they first get is not the decision maker. And so he asked, well, how do you actually figure that out, that they're not the decision maker? And how do you ask nicely who is? You can't just say, hey, you have no pull, you have no authority. Who actually does? That's not going to work well. And so one of the best things to do is try and figure out their decision process. And so you say, hey, I'm trying to get a feel for your decision process for other products that you've gotten that are similar to this. How does it happen? Who's involved? How long does it take? What are the steps? And through that, you'll get the decision makers. You'll get all the things that they need to go through. Oh, yeah, we have to have our security team look at it. And then the tech team needs to make sure it's going to integrate well. Then our CEO needs to sign off on it. And through that, you get the steps in the process, you get the people, and it makes it much easier to then lay out your MAP, your mutual action plan. It's called mutual because each side would have steps that they are responsible for. And at the end of the first call, when you say, okay, does this seem like something that you feel will work for you? And they say, yes, great. Well, then let's put together a plan that's going to get this in your hands. So we've laid out the steps in discovery. So let's just do that. I'm going to say the next step is the security team needs to go through this and approve it. Then you have to have the CEO sign off on it. Then the tech team needs to make sure. Let's lay out those steps. When you create this map, it makes it so that they know they have responsibility to get some things done, and you have responsibility to get some of those things done. Makes it much easier for both sides to actively make this happen.
The one aspect I'm always trying to sort of keep in mind with that, let's take the example of CRM, right? Generic enough. A CRM vendor would obviously know how their customers have in the past made a purchasing decision, maybe hundreds, maybe even thousands of times. Whereas a potential buyer, if all things go well, they make a CRM purchasing decision maybe once every 10 years, right? More or less. So who is sort of better equipped to see how a typical decision-making process would look like? to some degree, maybe even irrespective of what they say, how they come to a purchasing decision, because maybe CRM is specific enough, again, just an example, to say, okay, maybe we have to insert something here and there. So I like the emphasis on this mutual aspect that you're bringing in here.
Yeah, now if I can just jump in on that, Tim, because you're absolutely right. You do not want to let your prospects dictate your process. In the enterprise world, though, sometimes you need to merge them and make it a mutual process. You need to take your process and kind of make it fit into whatever their decision process is, because regardless of how much you want to take charge, and I fully advocate and teach my clients to take charge in their process, you're going to have some enterprise organizations that, they're not going to change, that the security team's not going to look at it and the tech team's not going to look at it. They have to have those things. But it's a matter of understanding what they need and then making your process fit around it. And then you take charge, be the captain of the football team, and make sure that you are the one dictating what happens and how it's going to work from that point. Now that they've told you this is the way it should be, now you, from the point forward, say, okay, next we got to do this. Next we have to do this, and we have to do this. And when you do that, I mean, just think about how amazing that would feel if somebody did that to you and said, okay, we're going to take charge. You just focus on your things. I'm going to take care of these things. And that feels so good to a buyer.
If I reflect back on the past 10 years of what I have personally seen, I'm not saying that is by no means representative of what other people are seeing, but my perception, we are still too often jumping through the hoops that our prospects are laying out for us. First you do this, then you do this. So we don't really have that. We don't take that control. We rather just try to accommodate the wishes that are currently being expressed by the prospects. So it may be an open question to you, like, is that a common phenomenon, or is it maybe just Tim specific, or is that something that a lot of salespeople struggle with, to sort of take that control that you just described?
Tons of people struggle with it. Tons of people. We have been brought up our entire lives to be told that the customer is always right. And it's been drilled into us. I was educated in hospitality management, so hotels and restaurants, and that was what I was told. And I lived that world for a while. And in sales, it's not the case. They're not right, and they don't know what they're doing. And you said it perfectly, Tim. That company, even though they may be a Fortune 100 company, they've never been through your sales process, right? They may have bought CRM maybe 10 years ago, but they've never been through your process. You've taken dozens or hundreds of companies through the process. You know the best, most efficient ways for them to get the right information and make a decision. They don't. And so it is so important to take control. It's so important for you to be the leader and the guide in the process, and not just sit back and hope that they figure it out. Too many times, and I actually had a client tell me this last week. He said, I'm trying to be a gentleman and let them figure it out. And that's not what we need to be in sales. We want to be nice. We don't want to be jerks. But to just sit back and just kind of let them do it is not the right approach. We need to be the ones to take charge, take control, and make sure that the process happens. Because otherwise, with all the priorities that they have, it's not going to happen.
So now maybe a bit of a theoretical question now, because at least in my experience, most deals are highly competitive, right? I mean, we gave the CRM example. Surely CRM market is extremely competitive, and many other software categories are as well. Now, if you have, let's say there's two vendors involved in a decision-making process, and both of the sales reps are laying out that sort of engagement mutual action plan that you've just described, but maybe they don't. I mean, I'm just putting myself in the shoes of the customer now, right? You have the AE over here. He says, hey, here's the mutual action plan. And then there is another sales rep over here, and she says, let's do it like this. And now I'm sitting in the middle as the customer, and I don't know, left, right, center, what's going on? But maybe, again, that's maybe a theoretical scenario, because too little people are doing it anyway. Yeah, I don't know. Have you observed that? Have you ever seen that? Or have you heard of such a situation?
No, I think it is theoretical, because in most scenarios, Tim, usually most people don't do it right. Some software companies, big software companies, pay me money to go in there and actually observe their sales team and see what they're doing. And very few are actually doing all the steps correctly. So many are not doing this mutual action plan. And it's very unlikely you'll go up against a company that does. So what we have seen, and I actually had on my podcast a guy named Chad Stewart, who is a professional software buyer. All he does is big companies hire him to go buy their software. Because like you said, they don't buy CRM but once every 10 years or more. but he does it all the time. So they hired him to run the process. And I asked him, hey, tell me, if you're looking at 3 different companies, if one has an outstanding sales process and the other 2 don't, does that make a difference? He says, absolutely. If I see somebody who dictates the steps, who walks me through it, holds my hand the entire way, shows confidence, knows what they're doing, that is absolutely the solution that we are going with. And it was great to hear that, because I have felt that, but it's been more anecdotal. But to hear that a professional software buyer says the best sales process wins, that's powerful.
We'll put a link to that episode in the show notes. I'm now extremely keen to also listen into it. I haven't heard into this one, but it's basically a confirmation of what we are sort of thinking about. Yeah, so thank you for that one. The second question I have in my mind, aside from that now relatively theoretical part, let's put that aside, which is a more practical one. Gatekeeping is a very common occurrence, right? I think you described it earlier. The person that we speak to in the beginning, maybe they're the project manager, they have sort of been given the task to do some evaluation. Maybe there's not even budget and so on. And quite often they are reluctant to grant us access to a more senior decision maker, budget owner. How do we overcome that hurdle?
So one of the ways that I've found works really well is make them your champion and get them to become the champion. And too many times when we say, yeah, we want to get our champion, we don't get them to actively commit to being the champion. We need them to say yes. So what you do is, however you do it, you demo the product in most cases. At the end of the demo, when you've confirmed, does this work for you? Do you see value in this? Is this something that's going to help you? And most importantly, all else being equal, would you like to be using this system? Do you want this in your hands? And when they say yes, it's not my decision, but yes, I would love to use this. Well, great. Now you know that, at least from a value perspective, they see this as the solution. And so what we need to do is get them committed to getting it in their hands. So you say, okay, that's awesome. Now, earlier we talked about your decision process. We got to go to security and IT and your CEO and yada, yada, yada. Are you able to help me help you get this in your hands? Are you able to be the person on that side to kind of make sure that we take the steps necessary to do this? Because I've worked with several other companies. We know exactly what needs to happen to make sure that you get this product, but I need your help to do that. Are you willing to do that? Yeah, sure. Great. Tell me what you need to do. Awesome. And right there, think about that. Again, I've worked with lots of other companies. I know how to make it happen. I can show you. We can do this together. We can make you have this. Instead of, hey, here's a PDF. Good luck. Hope everybody likes it. Like, such a difference. Like, this is somebody who knows their stuff. They're confident. They're going to guide me. I don't really have to do much. They're just kind of going to hold my hand and make sure that this happens. That feels so much better than, hey, here's a PDF. Hope that everybody understands what we have. See ya. Like, it's not even close. So when you can do that and get them to become your champion, then you say, okay, well, first step, we need to meet with your CEO just to make sure we've got sign off before we talk security, before we talk to IT, and they approve it. Let's have that meeting. Let's set that up. How does Tuesday 10 o'clock work? Like, don't get away from them until that meeting's booked. Don't just say, yeah, I'll send you an email. We'll find something. No, get the meeting booked while you have them on the call. And if they kind of hold back and they say, well, I don't know, I don't really want to get you in front of that. I'm not sure. Can you send me something? Say, wait. You just told me that you want this. And I told you that we've seen the right process to get this. If I send you something, chances are it's not going to work. They're not going to get the full value. You just saw this, and probably most of the stuff that I showed you is swimming around your head. It's going to be really hard for you to reiterate that back to them. However, I can explain it to him really succinctly and efficiently, and it's going to make it so that he fully gets it. Let's set up that meeting so that he'll be able to understand it much more cleanly. Does that sound good? Yeah. And it makes it so much easier when you can take control. Don't accept that they want to do it after they told you, yes, I'm committed. Yes, I want this. And yes, I'm willing to do what you tell me. If they say no, wait, you just told me yes. Why is it different now? You have to take charge.
Yeah, it's and for that, you need to be able to handle that conflict, to be a bit confrontative about it, I suppose. Yeah? And that is another skill in itself. Yeah.
Yeah, the first step is knowledge. One of my clients, John, he is working on this right now, and he admittedly struggles with it. He said, it's in my head. I know that you, Matt, would go one step further, but I'm having a tough time doing it. And so we talked about, hey, first of all, knowledge is the first step. You have to know that you need to do it. So the fact that you know it and are thinking it in the moment is key. Now you just need to take that one step. And once you take that one step, the next one is easier. And after you've done that and it works, the next client you have, it becomes easier and easier. And the repetition makes that more and more simple. So take that first step and make it happen.
So I want to play devil's advocate here a little bit on your response on how do we actually get that done in terms. And your response was get a champion, right? Develop that champion. And what I've seen, and maybe that's a cultural thing, right? I mean, I'm assuming you're operating most in the US market. Is that right?
My SaaS companies did. My clients are international.
International, right. So, and maybe it's a German thing. Yeah, could also be. Because now what I've seen a couple of times is that people that we try to develop into that champion role, they see, or they get an impression of what you're trying to do, and then they become a little bit more distant emotionally also to your solution, even though you can tell by the way they phrase it, the way they interact with you, maybe you're even the preferred vendor. But if you want to go one step further, there's some sort of reluctance to fully embrace that with you specifically, and they come back to the point of where saying, yeah, but we have to sort of keep it vendor neutral. We want to propose the board 3 different solutions and also give our recommendation, but up to that point we have to say neutral, so we can't do that so dedicated just with you. Is that something that you've seen?
Yeah, every now and then you're going to run into that. I have seen that even over in the US. However, again, I would just turn it back and say, hey, you really wanted this product, right? I mean, you can be honest with me. Is this the product between the 3 that you'd want to choose if it were your choice? Yes, I do. Cool. Well, let's get the steps in place so we can make sure that this is the one that everybody chooses, right? Do you want to help me do that? Yes. Okay, well, maybe they're not willing to meet with me privately, but maybe they're willing to do this or come up with some solution together that team is willing to do that's going to get you the edge. Because regardless of what they want, if they're not really confident themselves and they say, here's the 3, which one do you like? Well, I like this one, but I'm not sure. Well, we don't like it. We're going to go with that one. Like, they need to also have that same confidence and take charge. Imagine that conversation versus, hey, I talked to all 3. I can tell you that this system is by far the best. They know what they're doing. I talked with the guy. He's amazing. And they're going to be able to take great care of us. Like, a completely different conversation than, well, here's all 3. I think this one's okay, but you guys choose. And so it's part of what we call arming your champion. Arm them to make sure they understand what they need to do. And that's part of that mutual action plan.
But I would also agree on what Tim said. Maybe it's a cultural thing, because the process you're describing also means I become accountable within my company for that the decision-making process here. And then the question is, am I willing to be accountable for that? Because maybe I've never done that before, or I have some fear because if this is going wrong, I'm the stupid guy within the company. But at the same time, I think, like you said, okay, you need to have that conversation, right? Because if there is some fear and blocking the road, okay, let's get rid of the roadblocks here. So how can I assist you? And finding a good way. I think the key element is, as Tim said earlier, stepping into that conflicting situation and embracing it. Like, yeah, it's great to have that situation because maybe it's a conflict, but that will lead into a discussion and we will step out with a solution. Hopefully, if we don't talk about it, there will be no solution at all.
Absolutely. It's so well said, Jan-Erik, because so one of my main formulas that we've followed forever that worked great for our companies that my clients follow, it's called the perfect deal process. And DEAL is an acronym. It stands for discover, educate, associate, and lead. So we talked about discover earlier, but this is really under the lead umbrella. And part of lead is drawing out objections. And so instead of just kind of letting things be and hopefully they present this correctly to their board or their CEO, if we ask them, do you feel comfortable enough being the champion in your organization for this product and getting this to be the selection? And if they're like, well, no, I don't think, you need to draw out why. What are the objections? The most important thing in objection handling is understanding the objections and getting them to say it. The worst thing is that they have objections and they never mention it, so you can't overcome the objections. You want those out. So if they have a problem with it, get it out, draw it out, get it on the table, and you can address it. And once you can do that, it makes it a lot easier to be able to overcome the objection and get them to be the champion and get you in front of who you need to get to.
So I know we are sort of deviating a little bit off the original path of talking about discovery, but to be frank, I found this one to be extremely interesting so far. And the one thing that is still on my mind now is how also, and I'm not talking about just sales, right? I mean, both Jan and we are very much obviously in pre-sales, being a pre-sales leader, me, an individual contributor in pre-sales. So I always feel myself responsible also how we construct these deals. And I try to embrace what we talk about here also on the show. And the one aspect that I still can't really wrap my head around is how to be more confrontative without destroying sort of the sales mood and the good vibes, right? Because I think that is the fear, right? Obviously, if the customer is saying, let's do it like this, we accommodate this, then they feel, all right, we can do this. We're doing them a favor. We're progressing here, as opposed to really putting out that challenge without being, let's say, mean about it, for lack of a better word, right? Like, do you have maybe like a very tactical piece of advice how we can become more confrontative without destroying the mood in the general sales opportunity?
Yeah, and you're so right, because this is a feel that we humans in general don't like conflict. So it goes against our nature for most people to do that, especially when there's dollars on the line and you feel like if you upset them, they're going to just walk away. But studies have shown, and the Challenger Sale is a book that I highly recommend that I follow and a lot of my clients follow, that teaches this and shows this through research, that they're actually more likely to stick around if you do confront their bad ideas and get good ideas instead. But there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. And so not being a jerk about it, but more explaining through your history, your experience, your research, your data, whatever you have, to share what the right methods are, the right process, the right tactics is the right way to do it. What I've used that actually you can take away actionably is a model called Feel, Felt, Found. Feel, Felt, Found works so well. And I actually just this morning was talking with software founders and shared this with them. And so Feel, Felt, Found goes like this. I understand why you feel that way. Others have felt the same way. But what they have found is that when they follow this process, it actually works really, really well. Now, you might add a little bit more beef to what those things are, but Feel, Felt, Found means understand why you feel that way. You're empathizing with them, making them feel warranted and valued and that they're normal. Others have felt the same way. Hey, this is not unique. Like, there are other people who have gone through what you're going through. And when you do that, now they're connecting themselves to those others, these random people that you just mentioned. They now put themselves in their shoes. And when you then say what they have found is that this process works most efficiently, they now, since they put themselves in their shoes, they now will say, oh, if they found that, then I probably will too, meaning I should follow this process. The whole time I never said, I know I'm right and I'm the best and I'm amazing. I said, here's what other people have gone through, and I think you're going to have the same experience. That is super, super powerful, and something that I have used very, very often and very successfully. Feel, Felt, Found makes it easy for them to understand the right process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me. And it triggered another thought, and maybe this is where we can conclude the conversation with discussing this last point here. And I think in order to execute what you just described, Matt, I think you obviously need confidence, right? You need the knowledge and you need the confidence to go chest out there in front of my prospect and say, hey, this is what we have seen in the past. And I think in terms of, obviously that knowledge is available. If you as a new sales rep, you join a company, there's an onboarding program, you get educated on the market and so on, but you're still like maybe there for like 2, 3, 4, 5 months. And keeping in mind that sales in SaaS is a relatively high churn position, right? Maybe you're switching even jobs every 2, 3 years, maybe even more often. But to get to that point, and again, maybe this is also a cultural thing. I think the typical German, they wouldn't feel so comfortable going to a prospect after like 3 months and saying, hey, we've learned this in the past for the past 5 years and so on, knowing they have only been there for like 3 months. So this is something that I'm trying to put my head around right now, how we can bring that together. I don't know if that's a question, it's more a comment on what you just said.
No, I totally agree. Confidence is huge in sales. You have to be confident. You work much better. You come off much better when you're confident. And your buyer needs to see you as confident. Because when they see that, it shows them that you've done this before, you've helped others. Nobody is confident on their first time. Nobody. Like I wouldn't go into a sales situation confident, even though I've done it for 20 years. It's not going to happen. And so I highly, highly recommend getting repetition. Get those reps in. Talk with or do role plays with your new reps. My reps would role play with me at least 20 times, at least, before they ever had a real conversation with a real prospect. So once they've gone through training, gone through all the stuff, got ramped up, learned the process, then role play over and over and over. And when they're actually talking with a prospect, it's not going to be the first time. It won't be their first time talking about this thing. They will have gone through it with you a lot. And still, they won't be all the way confident, but they're going to look a lot more confident than they would if they had not gone through that process. And then the more they get the repetition talking with prospects, the more they have those conversations, the more and more confident they feel. And some of that confidence is manufactured. It's quote unquote fake, but you have to show it. And confidence comes from, looking confident comes from being enthusiastic, being passionate, having stories behind what you're saying, talking about relevant customer stories. These are all things that even new reps can do if you train them correctly.
I think those were some fantastic closing thoughts. I don't really want to now ruin them. Thank you for that fantastic summary here. And maybe even onboarding could be a topic for another conversation at some point in the future, because it seems you have a lot of experience there as well. And I found it very interesting what you just described. So looking at my co-host, Jan, do you have any other further comments, questions for Matt, or should we conclude here?
Enablement and coaching. I love it. And no other comments. Just thank you so much, Matt, for being with us and sharing all these insights.
My pleasure. My pleasure, guys. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks for jumping on, Matt. And I think we took a different direction in the conversation, but I think it was extremely valuable. We probably have to rethink the title. Originally was supposed to be around discovery. Now we have to think about a different one, but that's fine. Also, big thank you from my side for joining us on the show. And with that, I would like to wrap up Sales Excellence, your podcast for software B2B sales and pre-sales. Get in touch with us on LinkedIn. Thanks for tuning in again. And of course, until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.